You ever seen a ghost? Been abducted? Heard your name whispered from the other room when you're all alone? No, you say? Me either. But if you're like me, you're still fascinated by the paranormal. It seems everyone else has had an experience, and you want to believe it all. So why doesn't it happen to us? What does it all mean? How does it work? Is any of it real? Welcome to Paranormal Girl, a show that will attempt to answer these questions by taking the paranormal completely apart in search of proof. I'm not a blind believer, nor a hardened skeptic. I'm just looking for answers and willing to accept what I find. Hey guys, just wanted to pop in here real quick before the interview. I had such a great time on this one and was so excited to speak with this guest. We actually recorded this a few weeks ago, but due to some scheduling hitches and then the holiday, I realized afterwards I wasn't going to be able to post until now. So I really hope you guys enjoy this deep and fascinating conversation with a young lady that I was lucky enough to have almost magically enter my sphere. And my sincerest apologies for the tin canniness of the audio. Due to us both feeling a little sick at the time of the recording, we opted as a, just in case, to record this episode remotely over the phone. So didn't get to have her here to record in the booth, but still so very grateful she took the time to have this chat with me. I won't keep you waiting any longer. Please enjoy my conversation with believer and experiencer, Lindsay. Welcome back to yet another episode of the Paranormal Girl podcast. I'm your host, Kristen. If you've tuned into this episode wondering what the hell is a conversation with a believer, number one, you need to go back and listen to season 1, yo. You just outed yourself. I explain it all oh so perfectly there. And that season was all about shadow people. Seriously, who wouldn't want to learn all about that? And second, this episode is exactly what it sounds like, baby. Each season, I take a moment to speak to a fellow human being about the paranormal, their experience with it, what they think, how they feel. The first one was excellent, and I have no doubt this one will follow suit. It's been one of my all-time favorite things in the world to listen to believers and supporters of the paranormal talk about their experiences. And if you are a skeptical believer, such as myself, truly listening and understanding what someone who has been through these types of encounters has to say, it's all the more solidifying and confirming of what and why it is we believe, though we may never have shared in that kind of experience ourselves. And as far as these conversations go, no subject is off the table. This is a place for it all. I look forward to talking with my believer guest today, and as soon as someone with big enough cojones steps up, I will look forward to speaking with a skeptic guest at some point. As for the show today, I know that we will be jumping to probably quite a few subjects, as my guest has had a really incredible parallel existence right alongside the paranormal from childhood, and we are going to do our damnedest to include it all. I am very excited to talk to her and so thankful she agreed to come on the show. You guys are in for a treat. So, without further ado, let's get into it. My guest is a photographer and filmmaker who has spent the past 6 years dedicated to one documentary that she wishes to remain anonymous. As that project nears an end, she's beginning to venture into projects relating to the spirit and interdimensional realms. She has been told by psychics and spirit that she is a channel and plans to explore this in the coming years. Ladies and gents, Miss Lindsay. Woo! Welcome to the show.
Hey, Kristen, thanks so much for having me. It's so funny to hear myself be introduced like this because I'm, still very much in the closet, as are a lot of people about, being a
Yeah.
believer and not just a believer, but an experiencer.
Oh, absolutely.
Everybody
Absolutely.
has these stories, but it's, it usually takes one person to step forward and start sharing them first before others will follow. And I'm slowly becoming that person, which is how you and I realized
Y
that we shared this.
yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking about that, like, how lucky because, like you said, like, a lot of people have these experiences, a lot more than, you would even guess. You wouldn't know it, but everybody has something, some kind of experience with it, even if they're skeptical, but you and I just kinda, sorta, just randomly started talking about it one day, and, I've known you before. We won't say where I work. It is the place that shall remain unknown. But you and I have interacted before, and we just kind of started talking about it one day, and my mind was blown. Absolutely. So I'm I'm just really appreciative that we met.
Yeah, me too. And the timing is actually funny. Also, if you hear dogs in the background, I have two dogs, and I'm gonna try to keep them quiet. But I actually have some funny spirit stories about them even.
Ooh, I
Maybe I
would
can
love to hear
actually
it.
just start there since they're making themselves known.
Yeah, obviously they want to be on the show too. Go for
Yeah.
it.
So basically, I started to dream about a fox dog, and my dreams are very profound for me. They have been for many years. And basically, I was looking for a dog online, and I thought, I'm never going to find a dog. Where's my dog? I know it's out there. And people would say, when you know, you know. And then suddenly I saw this fox dog. I saw his photo on the screen. I was like, that looks like a fox. And I just knew immediately. I was like, that's my dog. That's my
Yeah.
and here he is. You can, hear him terrorizing the neighborhood in the background. And I love him. I love him so much. And I actually I've had other dreams about him where we sort of go to the same spirit community at
Mhm.
when we sleep. Like I had a dream recently that I was in this complex that was very lush and vibrant and had books everywhere, and it felt like a place to go learn and rest at night. And there was a person giving me a tour, and I kept seeing these beings around, and we would kind of nod at each other like, I recognize you and you recognize me. There was this kismet that just existed between everybody that
Mhm.
was there, even though none of us were actually speaking or communicating. And it was so funny. The person giving, or the being giving me the tour, walked me outside, and there were all of these little jacuzzis spread out about 20, 30 feet apart, and people were bathing and resting and recharging in these jacuzzis. And then there was a little jacuzzi, and my dog was in it. I was like, what is he doing here? He
No.
was sleeping in this little jacuzzi with his eyes closed, just kind of. Yeah,
Oh.
and it was like confirmation for me that he and I are connected on this deeper level, and that we, go to the same place sometimes when we
Yeah.
sleep.
I when you said that, I like, the mental image that popped into my head was, like, this little dog with, like, his elbow propped up on the side with, like,
Exactly.
sunglasses, yeah.
With like a little like towel waiting for him on the side. Actually, it was like full, like it was pretty luxurious. I was like, wow, he's
Oh.
doing great for himself. Like, you know,
Yeah, yeah, he's living the life, man.
he is, and he is so sensitive in general. He's always kind of moving energy, like yawning and shaking, and you can
Mm.
just see him, like he's a very energetic being. And I don't say this about my other dog, so don't think that I'm just like blowing this up because it's my dog, because I do not feel this way
Oh,
about
see,
my other dog.
I was gonna ask you if you had any do you have any other dreams about your other dog?
Well,
Or is
yeah. Basically, I mean, it's interesting. I'm a little hard on her, I must say. Like, she's the second dog, and she's not. We didn't click as quickly as my first dog and I, but I really really love her, and I have had a dream. I've had one dream about her, and it was bizarre. We were in India, and actually, the dream about my first dog was also associated with India, and so it was almost like there was a portal there of some sort. I've been there once for work. It was a very interesting experience, but yeah, so I had a dream about my second dog that she was a huge, and when I say huge, I mean like almost the size of like a whale huge. She was a big furry cow that had the same fur and the same coloring and patterns as her in this life. But
Mm.
she was like, I mean, in India, cows are really revered. They're like,
Sure, yeah.
very, very revered. And so she was like this enormous sacred cow, just kind of like slowly, sauntering down the middle of the street, and everyone was kind of like, oohing and awing at her. So I give her a hard time. I think she's wise and spiritual in her own ways. But yeah, both of them. I mean, it's been really cool to get to know them.
Yeah, and I've thought about this quite a bit, how because I've got 4 animals myself, 2 dogs, 2 cats. I have a zoo over here. And, sometimes in our lives, we come across these animals, what become ultimately members of our family who are just more. They're more. They
Hmm.
mean more. They're I call them my soul animal.
Yeah.
And then there's the others that we love just as much. They're like children in that way. We love them just as much. We would do anything for them, for their health, for their well-being. But, you have your soul animal too. That's
Yeah,
just yeah, it is kismet, you meet on a soul level. So,
definitely.
well, on that topic of dreams, we touched on it a little bit before, that you've had some incredible dreams, going back since childhood, and we're certainly gonna get into, all of your other experiences too, but I kinda wanted to start out talking about this, actually, specifically, like, these psychic dreams that you
Mhm.
mentioned. Would you be able to, like, talk a little bit about what kind of experiences are those, and then when did you start having them?
Yeah, so, well, it would be helpful to have a little bit of background info here. So, my grandmother on my mom's side of the family, my mom's mom, she died before I was born.
Mm,
She'll probably come up a few times in this conversation. She was like the rock of the family, the glue that held everyone together, and she died about 2 years before I was born. And people always tell me, "You remind me of your grandmother, and, if only your grandmother was still around or alive, your life would be so different." And she was incredible in all of these ways. She was an artist, and I'm an artist, and, she basically would have helped me make sense of my life had I had I gotten to know her, because otherwise I definitely feel like an alien in my family, you know, like a true alien. We'll go there too. But um, so her death was so painful for my mother that she couldn't even speak her name. We weren't really allowed to, I wouldn't say allowed, but it wasn't comfortable to speak her name, my grandmother's name, in our house.
Yeah.
And but yet it was this presence that was always there, because whenever you looked at my mom, you felt that loss. She just carried it with her, and still to this day, it was just, a part of her journey, I guess, to lose that very, very close connection at a very pivotal time for her. But
Right.
so it was very confusing for me when in high school I started to dream about my grandmother. And it's not just that I would dream about seeing her, or, I would dream about her actually coming to me with messages to give to my mom.
Right.
So I'm suddenly, I probably was maybe 14 years old, let's say. I would say, eighth, ninth grade. And the rest of my dreams at that time, at least, as far as I remember, were just pretty basic. They were probably about whatever drama was happening with friends and boys, and, maybe some anxiety around school. So for all of a sudden, this woman, this spirit, my grandmother, the grandmother, right, that has been this force and this void in my life for, at that point, 14, 15 years, for her to show up was very significant. And the first time that she came, I was sitting with a radio, this old radio. I don't even know the word for it, but it almost, it looks kind of like an old telephone or something. And she was speaking through it. And I could hear her voice, and I knew that what she was saying was for my mom, and I was furiously writing down what she was sharing. And I woke up the next morning, and of course I didn't remember any of it.
Oh, no.
Which was so frustrating. But
Yeah.
now looking back, I'm like, I don't even think it was about the specifics necessarily. I think what she wanted me to communicate to my mom was she has a message for you, meaning she's still here with you and with me, because that was a huge source of sadness for my mom that her daughter never got to meet her mother. And yet here I was hanging out with her spirit in dreams, and but I remember not even knowing how to bring that up to my mom because A, I didn't want to say grandma, I didn't want to say her name, but also B, because what a weird thing to say. Hey, I was hanging out with your dead mom in my dream last night, and she has something that she wants to tell you, and we've never had a conversation like this before.
And I can't remember. I'm
Like,
sorry.
my bad. Yeah, couldn't remember any of it, and I
Mhm.
remember this moment. I remember sitting in the other room, and I could hear my mom in the kitchen, and I was like, okay, you got this. Like, you're gonna say something, and finally, I just came out with it, and I was like, Grandma Doris came to me in a dream, and she had a message for you, and I just don't remember what it was, and she just kind of went,
Oh,
hmm.
oh, okay.
Yeah, which I don't know if that was just because of, again, her pain or because she thought that I sounded really far out. But
Yeah, it could have been anything. Well, so 2 things occurred to me. I'm glad that you brought up, like, the different types of dreams. Like, you could have your regular, like, I'm in high school, here's the drama, blah, 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 and then you're having these dreams that are more,
oh,
were
yeah.
you so you were able to decipher the difference between the 2,
Oh,
right?
very much so. Very, very much so. And there are even, I would say, more, I probably could, discern between 4 or 5 different types of dreams at this point as
Yeah.
dreaming has become a bigger part of my life. But back then it was basically just normal stuff or dead people stuff. And it started with just my grandmother, and she came again. She came again maybe, a few months or within the year she came again. And that time I had a VHS cassette in the dream, and I was watching it on the screen, and it was a video of my grandmother's hand. And I just knew it was her hand. It was not like I saw her face, or I just knew that's my grandmother's hand. And she was writing a message to my mom. and and I took the VHS cassette, and in the dream I went into my mom's room, and I woke her up, and I said, Grandma has a message for you. It's on this tape. You have to watch this tape. And then I woke up, and again, I didn't remember the message.
Oh,
But it
wow.
happened twice, and it happened, it didn't happen again for many years after that. But what's interesting is that was sort of a turning point in my relationship with my mom and our relationship, both my mom and my relationship to the paranormal.
Mm.
Because I'm going to backtrack a little bit here, and I hope, let me know if this doesn't quite make sense, but I'm just going to follow this.
Oh, no, you're fine. Go for it.
We got off to a rough start with ghosts in our house.
Oh.
Literally in our house. And so when I was 5, my mom divorced my father, and my brother, and I moved to this house, and I started to have very strange experiences there. And to the point where I was afraid to go to sleep at night.
Mhm.
I would sleep with lights on in my bedroom. I slept with the hallway light on and the bathroom light on in case I had to go to the bathroom in the night. Like, the house
Mm.
was lit up at night.
Yeah, yeah.
Every night. And that lasted for years. And my mom had no clue what to do with me. She actually took me to the eye doctor.
Oh, because you were seeing
Because I
things.
was seeing things. I was seeing things
Okay.
not just in the house, but also in my own, I guess, today, I would say my mind's eye. But back then, I would just close my eyes before bed and it would look like I was flying through space.
Hmm.
And now people, I have a lot of friends that are professional psychics and astrologers and mediums, and we've found each other, and that, they're like, oh, you were astral traveling.
Mhm.
But for a 5-year-old to be experiencing that and to have no context for what's going on, and
Right. That would be
I, it
terrifying.
was so the first time it happened, I ran into my mom's room and she was still awake. She was on the phone with a friend, and I kind of threw myself at the foot of her bed and I said, Mom, I'm dying. I was 5. She was like, looked at me just kind of like, oh God,
Ugh.
what am I going to do with this
Oh,
kid? She was like,
yeah.
Lindsay, I'm on the phone. I was like, okay. And that was kind of like, that was a turning point, I think, where I didn't feel like I could go to her with those experiences. And I think that happens a lot with kids, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have
Mhm.
an experience. Maybe it's the first one that they are conscious of, and they go to someone that they trust and they share it, and then that trust is broken.
Oh, absolutely, and it can totally shut it down, make it
Hmm.
dormant for years.
Yep.
But fortunately, it didn't quite bring it to dormancy for you. You
No, it
you
didn't stop. I wanted it to, but what's interesting is so that went on and on again for years. There was this one night where I had a my brother is almost 5 years older than me. And so back
Mm.
then, the difference between a 5-year-old girl and a 10-year-old boy is like pretty stark.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wanted to sleep with him. I was like, please let me sleep with you. He was like, get out of here. Like, ew. I'm like, please, please, please. He just thought I was so annoying. And again, I'm like, I'm seeing ghosts. And he would make fun of me for it, and he would say there was a ghost dog. He would say, oh, it must be ghost dog. And it became like a running joke in the house where my mom and my brother would blame everything on ghost dog. And maybe that was their way of actually trying to make light of things, but it just wasn't helpful, because what I really needed was validation that
Yeah,
what was
right.
happening was real, but they themselves didn't understand enough to know that it was real, right? So
Right,
I
right.
went into his bedroom one night and he wouldn't let me in bed with him, so I sat in a chair. Which I can laugh now, but like, and maybe someday I'll make a really dark comedy about this period in our lives, because my poor mother, honestly, she was really trying her best as like a single mom with not a lot of money and 2 kids that were very let's say vibrant, in their own ways. And so my brother is asleep in his bed, and I'm sitting in a chair trying to sleep. And, my head is nodding, and I'm almost falling out of the chair whenever I'm about to fall asleep. And I opened my eyes, and I saw a figure come out of
Mm,
this closet in his room. And I was terrified of this closet anyway. There were certain parts of the house that I just did not want to go near. I actually used to
yeah.
sleep in this bedroom. It used to be my bedroom, and I made a switch because I just couldn't handle being in that side of the house for some reason. And
Hmm,
so I saw this figure. She walked, I say she's wearing a dress, like a white, sounds so cliche, but there's a reason that things sound cliche, right?
yeah,
People
yeah.
people dismiss things as, oh, that's so cliche, or of course she was wearing a dress, or of course she was glowing. But it's like, well, we say of course because those are the stories.
Yeah, yeah, or she of course, she was white, like the white lady, really,
Right.
Lindsay?
Yes, yes, yes,
Really?
exactly. Exactly.
Mhm.
But the reason that we hear these stories so often is because it's just happening, and rather than dismissing them because we hear them so often, maybe instead we should just look into them and try to, investigate what's actually behind this.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Was that lady, the only, like, entity that you saw, like, human entity that you saw in that house?
Yeah, she was. It was the only time that I saw it like a human form. The other things that I saw were more just like, I would walk into my room and my music box would be like just finishing playing, or I would hear the sound of a music box down the hallway. And what's interesting is that now I'm like, oh, I was given those. I wasn't given them, but my great aunt had a collection of music boxes. And when she died, all of us went over to her house and everyone picked out a music box. And so in my mind now, and just after all of these many years of experiences and speaking to other people with experiences, I'd be like, oh, maybe that's just Aunt Maggie saying hello. And I don't think that, that I don't know if necessarily someone is in there cranking the music box and then they run out of the room just before you walk in, right? Because this is what's hard for people to believe. It's like, oh, what? Like your dead aunt came in and was like, oh, Lindsay's going to see this. And then she bounced right before you saw her. I don't have an answer. Obviously, we don't have answers for many of these things, but I'm curious. And it makes me wonder if spirit is able to manipulate matter in other ways, or even just, transmit sound, or maybe even, I don't know, are they able to, I don't want to say manipulate sounds malevolent, like a malevolent,
Malevolent, yeah.
malevolent,
Yeah,
sorry, a
yeah,
malevolent.
yeah.
I don't want to say manipulate, but like maybe they have some sort of impact on matter.
I've arrived at the point that I understand that everything is energy, everything is
Hmm.
frequency and vibration, everything. So, in all reality, maybe it isn't all that difficult for them to mess with something that is innately vibratory and
Right.
energy and frequency, such as music, such as electricity, such as turning the TV on and off, like stuff like
Exactly.
that. Maybe that is the easiest avenue that they can take to get
Hmm.
to us, to send us a sign or whatnot.
Right. And also, I mean, so around this time too, well, okay, so I'll just wrap up this haunted house story. Is this
Hmm.
There's the ending to this is actually relevant. So there was a little grave in the backyard that I used to like tinker with, and they told me that it was a dog.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, it's ghost. It must be ghost dog. That's how ghost dog came to be. It was like, oh, Lindsay likes hanging out around this grave. It's a dog, so yeah, ghost dog, right? No, it was not a dog. It was a human's ashes.
Oh,
Yeah, and it was
whoa.
the wife of our landlord, and she died in the house right before we moved in, and that's why he moved out,
Oh, wow.
right?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I didn't know this until years later. I was like, "What the like you guys what? You didn't tell me." But again, they just didn't assign any significance to any of these
Yeah.
things, right? But my mom had an experience that she told me about years later also. My brother and I were at my dad's house for the weekend and she was alone in the house. And she was convinced there was somebody in the house. So much so that she grabbed, I think she said an ice skate, because it was the closest thing to her that could be used as a weapon. Like, yeah, okay, good luck with that. But she had an ice skate and she called her friend and she was begging her friend to come to the house because she didn't want to go so far as to call 911, but she was very close.
Mhm.
There was nobody in the house. I mean, no one living.
I've been there. I have been
Yeah.
in situations where I am convinced someone else is there, and it's it's kinda dumbfounding when you realize, "Nope, there's nobody else here. What is going on?" So I
Hmm.
understand where your mom would have been at that moment.
Oh yeah, and I think it was really eye-opening for her, of course, because all of a
Mhm.
sudden it's like, oh, maybe my daughter isn't just doing these things for attention. I think that she thought I was looking for attention, and I really, again, I feel for these kids, and I feel for my younger self because how many experiences that children go through, whether it's experiences with the paranormal or real sickness, is chalked up to, oh, they're just looking for attention, rather than no, they're human beings just like all of us adults that are going through very complex
Mhm.
multidimensional experiences. They have bodies, they have spirits, they have all of the same fears as we do in these little bodies, and they need guidance, and they need just someone to hear them out and acknowledge that what they're going through is real. And so I think that was a moment for her where suddenly it was like, oh,
Yeah, and
Okay.
but she didn't tell you about this
No,
until later, right? You know,
much, much, much later. Yeah.
I've heard that kind of, uh, sense of, like, way that it has played out where parents, children grow up in a haunted house, things are happening, blah, blah, blah. The parents are shutting it down for whatever reason, maybe they're afraid, maybe whatever. And then later down the road, they come out with, oh, well, this one thing did happen to me, that they conveniently forgot to tell you before to validate what you were feeling, what you were going through. But from what I understand, your mom and your father, they were very grounded in religion. Is that
Well,
accurate?
my dad definitely was. My
Okay.
mom was like, when my grandmother died, God died for my mom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is problematic in its own way because I'm definitely not religious, but I think I mean for me it's added many layers of excitement, intrigue, comfort, whatever
Mm,
it is to my life to consider that there's something, and that's just because that's for me because of my experiences. And my mom kind of shut herself off to all of that for many years. And I think she just kind of felt like she was floating in a meaningless, cruel abyss that was life, and
right.
so I wouldn't really recommend that either. But my dad, I mean, he used to tell me, this is funny, this isn't exactly paranormal, but my dad used to tell me that Jesus was going to come take me. He was going to save me.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, yeah. And this was around the time that I was living in that haunted house. So I was like, oh, I'm truly trying really hard not to swear right now, but
Oh,
I
hey, we're
am
not
I
on
okay to
any major.
swear?
You're fine to swear.
And
Be
I
yourself,
did
lady.
swear. I did swear when I was 5 because I spent too much time with my aunt and uncle, and they were a very bad influence on me. But I had a lot of fun at their house. It's a miracle that I survived. But I would say shit. I would actually say it like shit. Like it's Jesus. Like Jesus is here. And I was like, no, 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 no. Like no, Jesus, leave me alone. I don't want to go with you. I'm 5 years old and I want to hang out with my friends and I have hopefully like a long life ahead of me. And I was just so afraid that he was going to come take me.
Oh,
And so
man.
I did pray. I would pray at night, and it's interesting though, because I will say, even though I don't think I was praying to the person that I thought I was praying to, I was communicating. I was communicating with something. Something was hearing me, and who knows? I don't want to blame everything on my father, but 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 who knows? Maybe that fear that he instilled in me, that fear of God, actually attracted some weird energies that were coming around. I think it may have contributed. I don't think it's I don't. It wasn't actually Jesus, from what I have learned and experienced. With and of Jesus as an adult. He was like a pretty chill guy who like loved everyone and was fighting for the poor and hanging out with the sick and wanted everyone to be taken care of. So I don't know which Jesus my dad was or is worshiping, but I did not want him around. And you know,
There's just so much ingrained fear in that story,
mhm,
in the Bible. I don't talk a whole lot about religion itself on my show. While I do personally believe that, yeah, there's something going on. I do, as of this point, believe in an afterlife. I believe that, yeah, maybe the stories in the Bible, they could have happened that way. I don't know. They were written by a bunch of men, however many
mhm,
years ago. Um, but the stories themselves are fine. They're fine. They're good tales. They have good meaning behind them. And if people were to actually follow, the good aspects of it, that would be fine. Religion wouldn't have been as atrocious over the centuries as it has been on
mhm,
people. But it's just when maybe your father was, following the alternate version of events, this horrible God, this horrible, that Jesus wasn't caring about the poor, wasn't, socialistic in nature, wasn't giving and loving and all, encompassing. So maybe that's so. There's certainly a lot of people who do follow that
Hmm.
route, for their own purposes, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's served him in ways. And what's really, really interesting is that my dad, I would say, and I've begun saying this to him because I'm more courageous now as an adult, but I would say that my dad is psychic.
Oh,
And I would say that his mom is psychic. And this could be a much longer and different conversation, but for me and my family, I wonder how much for them their religion is actually a comfort and an explanation for what it is that they're experiencing that they can't otherwise explain.
right, right.
Because they both, I mean, my grandmother has told me about actually seeing spirits and clearing them. I'm like, excuse me.
Oh, oh,
Yeah, but for them it's all like good, evil, and that's about as complicated as it gets. So that's about as
right,
nuanced as it gets, right? But
right, right. Very, very black and white.
very black and white. It's God, it's the devil, it's good, it's evil.
Mm,
And yeah, I mean, my dad has had premonitions. My dad and my grandmother both have incredibly vivid dreams. And so now I'm like, oh, of course I've had these various experiences in my life because it runs in both lines in my family. And my mom, and so this is kind of picking up where I took a little detour before, but my mom, around the time that I started to tell her about these dreams about my grandmother, a friend of hers was having a group psychic reading at her house. And she asked my mom if she wanted to come. And my mom went. And I will never forget this because at that time, again, I'd had these dreams, but, I wasn't in it in the way that I am now. And I was waiting for my mom to come out of this reading, and when she opened the door from this room after speaking with this woman for maybe a half hour, she was shaking. Her whole body was trembling, and the woman, the psychic, shared a lot of things with my mom that there's no way she could have known otherwise. She spoke about a recent death in our family and the type of wine that was shared in celebration of her death and how happy the spirit was that we had celebrated her death in this way. And she told my mom that I was about to go on this life-changing trip that summer, and I was leaving the country for the first time that summer, and all of so many things. And so my mom, that was kind of a turning point for her, and it is for many people, right? You need that personal direct experience,
absolutely.
and it can either happen spontaneously, like in the event, like that, a ghost shows up in your dreams, and or you see something, or I mean, there is a way to seek out these experiences, and that is finding a psychic to speak with. But there, people, and myself included, do have reservations around that too, because it's like, well, what kind of information am I going to find out, and what if I hear something that I don't want to know? And I have experienced that, and
Yeah, or
that's
what if
why.
it's all baloney, I
What if
mean,
it's all
there
baloney?
there are psychics out there that are just, vampires. They're
Oh
not
yeah,
the real deal, and it's kinda hard sometimes to separate the wheat from the chaff, especially if you're new to this, you don't know what to look for.
absolutely. And that's why at this point, when I was in my early 20s, I used to just kind of wander into random psychics. I lived in New York City, and they're everywhere, right? I would see the little neon sign with the palm, and I'd feel so intrigued, and I'd go in, and and it usually wasn't a positive experience. And so something I've learned, and I wish I could tell this to my younger self and to younger people now, like, just it is a very vulnerable, intimate, risky exchange to be in with someone, and at this point I only sit with people who I know are highly trusted by people that I trust. And those experiences have been life-changing. And I mean, so the real turning point for, with all of this, with me and my relationship to the paranormal, for my mom and her relationship to the paranormal, was around 2012 and 2013. And for whatever reason, it was then. And it, so my mom gifted me a psychic reading, and we went and we sat with this woman, and it was incredible. She, again, knew things that nobody could have ever known. She, she asked me if I had an uncle named Alan who had passed, and I did. And he had died in the 70s. And so that wasn't like public information that she could have found on my Facebook or something.
Yeah, it's pretty specific
Very
too.
specific. And she said, he thinks that you should make the movies yourself. And at the time, I was thinking about making scripted narrative movies about my family and in my hometown. And I was going to give those stories to these guys I was working with at the time who had kind of convinced me that, you know, they were like the chosen ones they would be the directors. And, I was just kind of like the girl hanging around giving them all of her really good ideas. It was like this classic dynamic. And she was like, no, like Alan says that you can do this. You can direct these. And she said, don't forget the scene with the bees. And when she said that, that was just, oof, I get goosebumps right now just saying it to you. There's a story from my father and his brother's childhood involving bees that haunts me. They were attacked by bees, and my grandfather could only grab one of them, and he grabbed my uncle because he was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was like an early rift in the relationship between them, because my dad was kind of left to fend for himself, even though he was still a child. And so when she said that, I was just like, wow, he's definitely here. And she described his voice, the way he spoke. And of course, I don't know, but she was like, he sounds like he's from the South. I was like, well, we grew up in a rural farm town in upstate New York, which sounds like the South.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
does.
Yeah.
And yeah, so, and my grandmother came through. And for my mom, this was just huge, because again, we still couldn't really speak her grandma's name in the house. But this day, this psychic reading changed everything. All it took was my mom needing confirmation, not from her daughter, because who am I?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is significant to hear it from a stranger, to hear these details shared that really confirmed for her that she was around. And, I'm going to mention a miscarriage, so I don't know if anyone, has a hard time hearing that. So you're going to skip ahead for a few seconds. But my brother and his wife had just lost a baby. And the psychic said, the baby is with your mom, to my mom. The baby is with her. She has the baby.
Oh,
And
wow.
they had just lost this baby. And so we knew who she was talking about.
Yeah.
And she said the body just wasn't right this time. And she'll be back. She'll come back. And she did. She's, 7 years old now, and she's amazing, and she's psychic, and she has psychic experiences. She used to talk about her past lives, and she's with us now. But that was just, and this is what, for me, I'm passionate about this topic for so many reasons, but I think so much of our life, and my life included, is ruled by this fear of death, the fear of our own death, the fear of the death of our loved ones, perhaps even more so, that fear.
Yeah.
But when we have these direct experiences and this knowing that there's something beyond this, there's a comfort that comes, and a liberation that follows that comfort, that really just kind of shakes things up. And I think that's really, really a powerful place to orient oneself in the world. Imagine if we just weren't afraid of dying because we knew that we were going to come back, or we were going to go somewhere else, or that we were going to be with our loved ones again. I mean,
Right. You would think that more of the science side would be desperately trying to, give us a better answer than, oh, lights out, all done. It's incredibly scary.
mm-hmm,
And I'm in that group too. It's an incredibly scary thing to think about. So yeah, maybe I'm kind of with you too. Like that's why I'm so fascinated with this whole world, and like, on my end too, I feel like it's all connected as
mm-hmm,
well. So like if you could just prove one thing, one aspect of all of this, then it just opens the doors to the rest of it, ultimately opening the door to, yes, there is an afterlife. Yes, there is more beyond this. Yes, you come back,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for
which would,
sure.
yeah, that would be absolutely comforting.
and this is a little conspiratorial, but I'm just going to go with it. I really think that we humans are disempowered in many ways. And sometimes I wonder if that's on purpose. I think fear is very dangerous. And I think the fear of death is, again, one of the more crippling forces in our lives. And I don't want to say beyond that, but alongside that is just this connection with the bigger picture, the other side, the many sides, many sides there are, and maybe even other life forms that are not necessarily human as we know it. And I think that there's a lot of information. I don't want to say I think that, because this is actually a fact. I'm playing it really safe here because I'm used to having to do that in my normal life. But a lot of this information has been buried, and there's been this stigma that's been cast on this topic. And there's a reason why I didn't even want you to mention my last name, right? Because I work with a team, and we're working on a project that could be compromised if it was made public right now at this point in my life, that I even entertain such thoughts. And that is very telling that we, with our own personal direct experiences, feel like we can't even speak freely about them because we might be smeared or punished for them in some way. And there's a history behind that. There's how did how did how were there seances being held in the White House? I'm staring at this book right now on my bookshelf. It's called Occult America, and it's by Mitch Horowitz. It's an amazing book, and it says Occult America, White House seances, Ouija circles, Masons, the secret mystic history of our nation. How did it go from being, and Mitch Horowitz is an incredible historian. He's just incredible. And he could speak to this a lot better than I can. But the reason I mentioned this is because how did it go from being, in the White House to now being just made into some joke that no one wants to touch or be associated with?
But yeah, and at the same time, do you think was that very openly, well known though, or was it a little bit more, cloak and dagger too? Like, yes, of course it was, happening in the White House. They were taking that, as information, extra information or whatever. But you know what I mean? Like, was it very publicly known and accepted?
It wasn't very publicly known, but what's interesting is that I think what really interests me about this is that the people who have the power draw on this power
Right.
still. And yet, if we just look at the way that the paranormal has been depicted in the mainstream, it's been made into a joke,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes me wonder if there is, again, this is very conspiratorial thinking. I'm not saying that this is a fact, but it just makes me wonder. I'm like, does it benefit some people or organizations on this planet? Does it benefit them to cut us off from this knowing and the other, like, very large percentage
Mm-hmm.
of our lived experience?
Yeah. Without really knowing, I just have an impulse to say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's just really hard to explain. Obviously the witch trials, there are reverberations from that, and people were, burned for working with herbs. It's like, we have to really own our place in this greater history. And I don't mean own as in, we have to punish ourselves for it. I think there is some atonement still that needs to happen on some level, and I don't mean just against witches, but against all of the people that were seen as disposable or threats to society, right? The outcasts. Um, but I think it's worth considering the impact that those times had, and that they're still having in more subtle ways. Like I grew up seeing Miss Cleo on television. I don't know if do you remember Miss
I
Cleo?
do. Yep.
And maybe she was totally legitimate. I have no idea, but that's our collective idea. That's the imprint that was made as far as like, this is a psychic. It's a person who looks into a ball and usually has, long fake fingernails. And some people do that. And I have friends who have totally just embodied that,
Yeah.
that stereotype, like proudly. They're like, you know what, we're going to take it back. But for the most part, it really just delegitimizes the field and the powers in the eyes of the public, and especially a skeptical public that has been really conditioned to lean towards mistrust and non-belief, disbelief.
We are gonna run a little long today. I hope that's okay with everybody, 'cause this is,
Sorry, I could talk about this all day.
no, I know, and it's like opening all these possibilities in my mind. I'm sitting here like that meme with all the math, signs floating around my head.
Yeah, a
But,
beautiful mind.
yeah, because this opens so many different conversations that we could
Mm.
have. We could literally do a conversation with a believer with you, Lindsay, every season henceforth. But what I want to do actually is steer the conversation, because there is something
Mhm.
that you are very interested in. You do.
Yeah.
That I kind of want to dive in a little bit.
Okay, let's go for it.
Do you know where I'm going with
I know
this?
exactly where you're going with this.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, let's
So,
do it.
all right. So, two parts to this that I kind of want to mesh into one. One, the use of certain psychedelics
Yes.
is actually fairly common throughout the world of the paranormal. And I understand you have had some really incredible experiences regarding that. I guess just talk about it. What has been the impact of that on your life, on your spiritual journey? Where is that leading you?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I'm in awe, and I'm speechless. I'll find the words, but I'm speechless, and I think that's telling. It's been huge. And similar, we don't have to backtrack, obviously. I know we're moving forward, but as far as like burying things that could benefit us, I think that psychedelics could definitely be put in that category as well. Because what are the chances that there's this substance, psilocybin, magic mushrooms, that grows on the planet, that a plant that has been made illegal, and it has lended me some of the most magical, awe-inspiring, transformative experiences of my entire life, and it's illegal. That's
Right.
very strange. So anyway, moving on, because we already did that, but that's very strange. I think that's especially because alcohol is legal, and I've seen terrible things happen. Know people who have died
Absolutely.
from alcohol, and
Yep.
but psilocybin, bad, bad, bad. Like, don't connect with God. That's bad.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so yeah, I mean, my first few experiences with psilocybin were just mind blowing, because I was having um, I was prophesizing, basically. I was in one case, I was telling a friend, this is what's going to happen. This person's going to call us, and he's going to have an idea for a movie, and we're going to have a lot of meetings, and the movie's going to be about this, and on and on and on. And he was looking at me kind of just like I was like I had 10 heads, because neither of us were even working in film at the time. And sure enough, that's what our life became. And when the call came, he kind of he called me, and he was like, "Oh my God, I got the call." And I was like, "Told you." And during that same mushroom trip, we saw this man, and he walked past us. And as he was leaving, I was yelling at him. I was like, "See you later." And my friend was like, "Oh my God, this is embarrassing. Like, here we are, like looking like we're out of our minds." And we were, which, I think people could benefit from once in a while, because my mind doesn't always know what's going on,
Yeah.
and so we were out of our minds, but here I am shouting at the stranger, "See you later." And my friend Pat was like, "Shh." And then I started to say, "See you tomorrow." I was like, "See you tomorrow." I didn't even know why I was saying this. And sure enough, the next morning we wake up and my car has been towed. I'm like, "Oh my God, it's pouring rain." Somebody tells me where my car probably is. Don't even know for sure if that's where it is. We borrow a car. We drive to this junkyard where my car is, presumably. And we're waiting in the lot. There's nobody else there. And then a car pulls up next to us, and it's the guy from the day before who I was yelling at, see you tomorrow.
Whoa. Whoa.
Yeah, so that was my first mushroom trip, and it was just kind of like, okay, there's something going on here. What is up with this? And then after that, I was living and working on Martha's Vineyard for a year, and I was working for a photographer out there, and I had a few trips there, and that's when the spirits really started coming in.
Okay.
I was
Okay.
like, oh wow, okay. So in one case, I was like kneeling over this cliff looking at the ocean, and all of a sudden this it looked almost like a prism just kind of like opened up before me, going off into the distance, and I could see empty space. It was very fractal, and it was like a reflecting light. It wasn't empty space. It looked like a grid of energy. It looked like how we kind of like depict what we imagine Wi-Fi to look at or something. It was this system that just filled all of it, all the way up, 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 every direction. And this portal opened. It was like a little tunnel, whoop, into the distance.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard a voice in my head that was like, "Hi." And I was like, "Hello," in my head, and then I was like, is this real? In my head, all of this was telepathic. I was just thinking, and this is the thing that's confusing, is I think a lot of what we think are thoughts might not necessarily be ours, but we're just not attuned to discern between the different thoughts or the communication
Right.
that's happening in our head. I didn't hear it like a voice being whispered in my ear, "Hello, I'm a ghost. I'm here. I'm a spirit." It sounded just like my own voice in my head, but because of the substance that I was working with, because of psilocybin, I could very, very clearly delineate between what was my thought and what were other people's thoughts. And so when I say people, they were beings. It was like, yeah, we're here all the time. You can talk to us whenever.
Mm-hmm.
We're always here. We're always trying to talk to you, but you can't hear us because there's so much noise. And you're not giving us the space to communicate with you. And then they also reassured me, whenever you think of us, we are right there immediately. They're not, you don't have to call them woohoo from afar and wait for them to like ride in on their like horse or get on their little, jet or something. It is immediate. They are right there.
So these were just spirits.
Yeah,
Spirits
so
coming
those were
through
general
finally.
spirits. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say like maybe like a guide. That was sort of like the entry point into what then followed. So then what followed was a friend of mine. She had just died of a brain tumor. She was maybe 20, 21. I didn't know her for long. When I met her, she was dying. So it wasn't like it was unexpected, but it was still, it was strange to befriend somebody who was so young and who looked like she could have been my sister, and she was dying. And
Yeah.
so she showed up. And it's not that I heard her voice. Again, I just knew it was her.
Yeah.
She was like, "Hey," and she shared a lot of that I can't really share. It was related to my boss at the time who introduced us. She was just kind of like, wow, like I didn't know he was such a jerk, kind of. It wasn't anything like really profound, but it was actually validating for me because that was something that I was like really like dealing with in my personal life at that time, was coming to
Mm.
terms with that year that I'd given this person like of my life and so much of my energy, and it felt like just very like unappreciated and sort of like taken for granted. And she was like, I see, I know what's up. Like,
Mhm.
and then she was like, basically we used to joke about going dancing. She would, when she was alive, she would say, "When I beat this cancer," we knew she wasn't going to, but she had the most incredible outlook. She was like, "When I beat this, we're going to go dancing." And so she was just like, "Let's dance. Like, let's just dance. Like, we can still dance.
Oh, wow.
Like dance with me, like let's dance." Yeah. And like I feel like I'm gonna have to do that after we get off our call, because it's like the sense was like we can still be together. It's just we can still get to know each other, and I'm here for you. And what was wild was I knew my grandmother was there, like the grandmother, right? The one that I've mentioned. I
Right.
knew she was there, but she was hanging out in the background. Like, she gave Nikki, my friend Nikki, the space. She kind of just let her come in. And she was just, I knew she was there. And so it's funny. I've always like heard that from psychics where they're like, oh, like, so and so's here, but they're stepping aside. Or like, I had a reference point suddenly. I'm like, oh, that's what that means. Like, I don't see her sitting physically behind Nikki. I just know in my core that
Mhm.
she's somehow here holding space, but she's letting her come in.
You could just discern the feeling.
Yeah, yeah, and it
Yeah.
didn't require thinking, and this is again why I think the human mind is so problematic, or the way that we've been programmed to use it, I would say, like, because it wasn't like some like logical thing that I was thinking about. It was this, everything was immediate, and it was just a deep, immediate knowing. This is what's going on, very matter of fact. And then what's wild is, so the person I was with in real life, who I took the mushrooms with, my very, very good friend, her mom died when she was a teenager. And her mom came, and she kind of made herself known. She showed me these earrings. Like, I saw an image of earrings that my friend wears that were her mother's. And I was like, oh, so her mom is here. That was like the clue.
Mhm.
And she basically was like, tell my daughter that I'm okay with her father moving on, romantically, moving on and being in another relationship. And so I told her that afterwards. And I think it was within the month, maybe even like a couple weeks, that her dad called her and told her that she was getting remarried, actually.
Oh, wow.
And so she kind of had a heads up.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, there's like, that was, I would say, the next step. And then the next even more dramatic step was that on another mushroom trip, and I want to say too, I don't think that mushrooms are something that you should just like willy-nilly be taking all the time, because you can lose your grip on reality.
Right,
And there's
right.
a reason we're here. And so I don't want to like share this information in a way that's irresponsible, because I think like any substance, like alcohol, or even cannabis, these things need to be used wisely, right, and responsibly. So I would take them like at that time, every 4 months, let's say. Now it's more like once a year, and I want to get more back into it. But so the next experience I had, I was lying on the beach. It was cold. My eyes were closed, and I was shown this house that I spent a lot of time in as a child. And I was running through the house, and I burst open the back door, and my field of vision was completely white when the door was thrown open, and I knew that the light that I saw was the owner of that house.
Mhm.
And she was my grandmother's friend. And I was like, oh, it's Rosie. And I was just bathing in this white light. And I was like, oh my God, she's here for me. Like, she's looking out over me and she's protecting me. And I just felt her, like, loving, warm embrace, not physically. It was freezing cold. I was like shivering on the beach, but none of that mattered, because this was like so much bigger and deeper than that. And then this other light came, and I knew it was my grandmother. And it's a strange thing to say, but I felt like, and I still feel like today, that I have met my grandmother, because I felt her presence. I felt her spirit. And that was a very big moment. And then ultimately there are two orbs, energy orbs of light, merged into one huge pulsing ball of light. And I was like, oh, they're together. They're looking out for me. It's all good. And like, all of my stupid human worries just kind of just washed away.
Oh, that's incredible. With the experiences that you've had, like you could literally at this point, write a book, do a movie or like, a video of some sort where you can kind of teach people somehow how to like begin to open that side to
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
themselves, be able to decipher, the things like the dreams, decipher, what is my thought versus what is, information that is just coming into my mind.
Exactly.
Our brains are, it's not necessarily that they're programmed, although they are, from childhood,
Mm-hmm.
but they're just designed only for finite information. Everything, it
Mm-hmm.
has to have an end. Everything needs to be boxed in. That's why we can't conceptualize, what's beyond the edge of the universe, what's beyond
Yeah.
that, things like that. We just cannot conceptualize it in our day-to-day way of thinking. So thankfully, there are, substances on this planet that grow naturally. There
Mhm.
are, spiritual gurus that have found the way and can teach you. So, and maybe your future that lies somewhere in there. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I do get curious about this, and this is, I'll say, like the final installment of this is, I'll say the pinnacle of this conversation that'll be relevant in a couple of moments, that word. But I don't want to really create a hierarchy in my mind of meaning, but because meeting my grandmother was incredible and all of this was incredible. But I would say the most shocking and mind blowing experience that I've had in my entire life, and it was on uh, psilocybin, was when I was in a little cabin with my boyfriend at the time, and we took the psilocybin and we both just lay down on the ground on little mats and closed our eyes. And this is the thing, people imagine magic mushrooms like woo Woodstock, like woohoo, like, just like frolicking and flowers, and it can be that, and that can be very beautiful to feel so in love with and connected to nature. That's important because we need nature. And that's beautiful, and I don't want to demean that, but there's this other way of engaging with these substances that are incredibly therapeutic and mystical on a whole other level, that is the inner world, the inner experience. And so we were just lying there, and all of a sudden I was seeing inside my brain. And I saw my brain, and it looked very technological. It looked, and I would describe it as hardware. It looked like a computer. And I saw and felt these beings that were attuning my brain and my system, and they were upgrading it. And they were working on these deep, 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 deep levels that I can't even comprehend.
Hmm.
But on psilocybin, I could. And that's the interesting thing, because once you come back to this reality afterwards, it's like, wait, what? How do I even put words to these things? But so I'm gonna describe what happened, but just imagine that there's like 1,000 times more information that I can't even put into words.
Right, right. Go ahead.
And so I'm lying there and I'm seeing and feeling these beings working on my brain, and I see this really, really sharp crystal point, streaming light that is shooting up, 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 all the way up to like the highest point. And all of a sudden, these beings started to speak through me. I was speaking out loud, and thankfully, I had a witness because I never would have believed this. But they were speaking through me, and they basically told me, this is so funny. I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. Um, they were like, they're basically what we would describe as aliens, but that's not a good enough word. And I'm trying to come up with a better word. Other dimensional beings,
Hmm.
something like something like that. And they basically were like, Earth is engaged in a spiritual war, and we're invested in it, and many other energies and beings are invested in it, and we're on the team for good.
Hmm.
For there's a team. There are teams that are for destruction, and then there are teams that are working, that are influencing humans, that are for reconstruction. Let's say regeneration, building life, thriving. And I don't want to go into all the details because it was pretty dark and harrowing, but they basically were like, we have the ability to shape the world that we live in with the stories that we choose to tell. And they were like, you, Lindsay, are a storyteller, you're a messenger, and we've given you these tools, filmmaking, because it can reach a lot of people, and you're in this war. Everybody is in this war, and on some level they're engaged in this war, this spiritual war. And yeah, they shared a lot of information. They identified themselves as the Pinnacle, and they, basically, yeah, they spoke through me for, I don't know, maybe like 10 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. And when I came out of it, I thought, what the hell was that? It felt like the most wise, way wiser than me,
Mm.
the most wise, old, ancient, like all knowing, all seeing force. It was very comforting. I felt like I was in good hands, but I started to doubt it immediately. I was like, what is, like, aliens communicating through me? The Pinnacle? What is this? A spiritual war? Storytelling, like, what is all of this? And so the really, really wild part is that about a year and a half later, I was sitting in an airport. I was in Los Angeles and I was about to fly across the country, and I was looking at my phone like everybody does at the airport, just waiting for
Mhm.
my flight to board. And my phone starts glitching, which it, does sometimes because it's old, or at least that's what I tell myself. And I kid you not, you can't make this up. But I'm looking at my phone and a podcast episode pops up on, like, the Apple podcast. It's the title scrolls across my screen and it says Ashley Wood, the Akashic Records, The Pinnacle. And I was like, The Pinnacle? Because I had sort of thought about the Pinnacle from time to time, but I had also sort of like written it off as like, oh, that was just like, it must have been random. And so I listened to that episode, and everything that this woman described, she channels the Pinnacle, was exactly what I had experienced. The numbers that they associate themselves with is the number 4. I'd been seeing the number 4 everywhere. Everyone in my life knew about this because I was like, why am I seeing 4s everywhere? I feel like a crazy person. Like, am I literally losing my mind? And she's like, yep, they work with the number 4. This is how they present themselves, like in physical form. If they come to you in dreams, I had seen those beings before. I'm aware of other people in my life now that I would say are, from this energy cluster or whatever you want to call it. And it all makes sense now. But for me, that was huge. I never imagined that experience could ever be validated by another person. And yet there she was talking about it, and so moving forward, and what they told me. And so, yeah, looking ahead, and what they told me also was, you are a channel, Lindsay, that you don't need mushrooms to do this.
Mhm.
And that a film that you make in the future, like next big project, is going to be about this very experience. This
Wow.
very experience of
Wow.
channeling. I don't know if it's working with them in particular or just channeling in general, or maybe it's that and psychedelics. I don't know yet. I think it'll be revealed
Yeah,
in
yeah.
time.
Is this is
But
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. Is this something that you have started to piece together to start to work on, or are you just waiting until it does reveal itself completely?
I have started to work on it slowly. I'm like looking at my bookshelf right now as I speak. I have acquired books that I definitely did not have, 3, 4 years ago before this unfolded. And this is the thing. And this is what I just love reminding people in my life about this. I'm like, yeah, okay, maybe I sound like I'm totally out of my mind again. And maybe you think that you could never speak like this, but I wasn't born this way. I mean, maybe I was, right? But I didn't come out of the womb talking like this, or like having books on channeling, or books on the Akashic records, or thinking about like extraterrestrials and like ingesting mushrooms and communicating with them. Like, the who I was even 10 years ago, I was so far from this. Yes, I was having dreams, but I was dismissing them. I was just like, oh, I chalked everything up to being random, and and this was not who I was. Now I know that this is who I was destined to become. I feel like I'm like waking up from the dead. I feel like I'm waking up from like lifetimes of sleep, and it's probably because my own mother and my father and my grandparents, like how many generations have just been like shushed and cut off from this. It feels like really enlivening to be coming back into touch with this stuff. And so I am starting to do, um, I'm starting to do more research, and I'm starting to, I'm just attracting. It sounds so like new agey, but it's just true. Like, I meet people, like even you. I meet people in my life. Like, the more I own this, the more people I come into contact with who are incredible and who have their own experiences and their own skills that are very different from mine. And I think that is what is so incredible about this realm is like it does seem like there are really no limits to it. And that doesn't mean that we should write it off as not being real. That just means that there's this whole like rich, like infinite landscape out there that we could all be living in or at least communing with and asking questions of and making offerings to that I think would really serve us, and it's right there, and I'm excited to venture more deeply into it. And as this current project comes to a close, again, it's been 6 years. I really think that my life is going to more and more become about everything that we just talked about.
Well, I certainly hope so. I will be first in line to consume that, whatever work comes out of that. That's incredible. I think that is a wonderful place to kind of wrap that up. Unless you have anything else that you wanted to, any other experiences you wanted to get in before we go to our outro today. Any messages you wanted to get across?
I mean, I guess the last thing that I'll say, and this is more of like a shout out to all of the practitioners whose life's work, has put them on the front lines of the paranormal. A lot of my friends who are in this line of work are going through this crisis right now where they couldn't run from their calling as hard as they tried, and yet they're just not really respected. And that's a really hard place to be in. They have people coming to them constantly, asking for things from them, spiritual consulting, psychic readings, communicating with, deceased loved ones. Like everyone wants something from them, but yet they don't want to pay them for their work, even though it's really important work. And it's like, if you want something from someone so badly, in the form of a psychic reading, let's say, then doesn't that have value? Doesn't that have value? And I think it's also tough because, one of my best friends is this incredible reader, and her clients, a lot of them are professors, and some of them are doctors and intellectuals and very, quote unquote, successful people who will never go to bat for her because they don't want to admit that they consult with a psychic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the last thing that I'll say, like on that note, is like, if anyone has the opportunity to support or validate someone in their life who's going through something like this, whether it's their child who's seeing ghosts, or it's their friend who's an astrologer who's, people are always trying to take advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, and I'm speaking to myself here too. I hope that in the future, especially given all that we're going through as a planet right now, that we can start to shed some of this stigma and shame and like shadowness around this world, and just start to own it more fully and speak about it with the respect that it really deserves. And I get curious about what that world looks like when that shift happens.
My gosh. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I can't say it enough. Thank you for coming on today. Where can people find you to follow along with your work, with the Pinnacle and your channeling?
So I just started an Instagram. So there's nothing there yet, but I think, I created the container with the hope that that would, jumpstart me actually owning this and doing it. So having some followers would definitely help. It's like the pressure. I benefit from pressure. I think a lot of people do, healthy pressure, encouragement. Let's say, So the handle is Sayeth, Sayeth, Seren, Seren. And now I feel like the last thing I'll actually say has to explain this. Sayeth Seren, I heard in my mind. I was very sick for many years, and in one of my sickest moments, I was very, quiet because I just didn't have the energy to even think. And in that quiet, I heard, saith Saren. And this was in 2013, around all, the time when all of these things started shaking up. And again, my head was so deep in the sand that I didn't even think to Google, what does that mean? Saith is more self-explanatory, right? Says, say. Seren, Seren, is star in Welsh. Says the star, or the stars say, and the Pinnacle, they are, and what I've learned from this other channeler, associated with the Pleiades star cluster. So as far back as 2013, these little hints were being dropped in, and I'm glad that I'm listening now. I could have started listening sooner, but here I am. But yeah, so saith Saren is the handle, and I'm just gonna be, an anonymous person, because it's not about me. I don't want fame from any of this. This isn't what this is about. It's about whatever they have to say, and just serving as a vessel and getting that out into the world, and having fun with it.
All right. At saith Saren. I will definitely be following you once we are done wrapping today. And anybody listening, go follow her. Add to that pressure. It's good for her. So, all right, Lindsay, thank you so much
Thank
again.
you.
Really
Yes.
appreciate it. And that is going to be a wrap for this episode. If any listeners are interested in being on my next Conversation with a Believer episode, I do one every season. So reach out, let's connect. Find me at ParanormGirlPod on any of the socials, or just email me at paranormgirlpod@gmail.com. My door is always open. Much thanks to some of the new ratings over on the Apple Podcast platform. Y'all rock. I appreciate it more than you know. If you haven't yet, please give this show your digital version of a thumbs up, dude, by rating and reviewing on whichever platform you are listening. And briefly, before we sign off, tune in on the very next episode for the Season 2 finale, where I will officially be wrapping up my thoughts on the Mandela effect. We've gone over the theories, the skeptical side, the effects themselves, residue, flip-flops. Let's put all that we have learned together. At long last, my final conclusion, y'all, be there. And with that said, stay safe, keep the nightlight on, and sleep with one eye open.